All right, next up we're going to learn about the pancreas. The pancreas is going to be located just behind the stomach. Inside the pancreas, we have endocrine cells that occur in small little clusters called pancreatic islets, or the islets of Langerhans. These are going to be responsible for producing glucagon and insulin hormones. Now, these two are going to have two antagonistic goals. So glucagon is going to be responsible for increasing the glucose in the blood. It's going to prompt the liver to convert glycogen to glucose and to form glucose from lactic acid and the amino acids. Insulin, on the other hand, is going to be responsible for decreasing the glucose in our blood. It's also going to stimulate the transport of glucose into muscle cells, white blood cells, and connective tissues. It also inhibits the breakdown of glycogen into glucose and prevents the conversion of amino acids and fatty acids into glucose. So there are a couple of homeostatic imbalances that are associated with the pancreas. For example, diabetes mellitus. This is going to be a group of metabolic disorders that are characterized by abnormally high levels of glucose in the blood. Now, this is going to be caused by problems with either insulin production or insulin function. So either insulin is not being produced or the insulin that's being produced is malformed and not working the way it ought to. So here is sort of just a slide that kind of goes over insulin. The pancreas is not going to be under pituitary control. It's going to respond directly to changes in the blood glucose level, so it kind of works on its own. But what happens is when your blood glucose levels spike, insulin is produced and released, and it's going to prompt the liver to store that sugar, take it out of the bloodstream, and kind of help absorb that sugar. So it's going to be secreted when the blood glucose levels are high, typically right after eating, and it stimulates the uptake of glucose by cells. So ultimately, insulin is going to be responsible for lowering your blood glucose levels and bringing you back down to normal. Glucagon is going to work oppositely. This is going to be secreted when blood glucose levels are too low, so typically between your meals. This is going to stimulate the liver to break down that glycogen into glucose. It also promotes the use of fat and protein in preference to glucose as energy sources. Adipose cells can break down fat into glycerol and fatty acids. The liver can then take those up and use them to make glucose. So in this way, the glucagon raises the blood glucose level. So when your blood glucose gets too low, glucagon is secreted and it brings that level back up to normal. All right, so we didn't really talk about exocrine and endocrine function of the pancreas. We did talk a little bit about the endocrine function and how it's responsible for releasing glucagon and insulin. But you should be able to determine how the pancreatic hormones interact to regulate blood glucose levels. So you should know the similarities and differences between insulin and glucagon when they are released and what they're ultimately responsible for doing.